Men will even show up to like feminist events and make that all about them. What got me thinking about this was I just saw a video about these dudes in Australia who apparently have millions of followers and make a ton of money from doing like practical jokes, which y'all know how I feel about men and their dumb jokes, especially practical jokes, because they're usually practical jokes and stupid shows like Punk'd with Ashton Kutcher and all those pricks, jacks, literally just make pranks, which is essentially like exploiting people's trauma responses, especially women or anyone marginalized. They literally like, it's funny to them. And so I don't really like pranks in general, because you don't need to give me any more reason not to trust people. And a prank is just going to make that worse. But let me give you a little bit of context before I make my larger point about this. So apparently these dudes make a lot of money making prank stuff. And, you know, not surprised, millions of followers, probably make a ton of money. Oh, they have a show on Paramount, blah. So they pulled off this prank for their new show, or season 2 of their show, where they showed up at a thought-provoking discussion of love and marriage featuring high-profile feminist authors. So audience members were pissed because they went there to see their favorite feminist authors speak about love and marriage and stuff like that, only to basically get punked by these dudes. But it wasn't just the dudes, the women were in on it, which is like kind of baffling to me, but I'm gonna get to my point about that, why they may have participated in that in a minute. So they had this special guest, which is one of the dudes who's a part of this comedy group, as to give his perspective as a young male. Like anybody wants that. Now, some of the women who were in that audience didn't know who this dude was, even though they've got millions of followers. Not everybody cares about this kind of comedy. I personally don't find that funny, so I probably wouldn't know who these dudes were either. And then it wasn't until after the event that they found out that this misogynistic comments from this dude had been fed to him through an earpiece as part of a prank. And the premise of their dumb show is that they see members of the uninspired being put in uncomfortable situations in order to say what they are told or face punishment. That in of itself is so problematic. Do we really need anything more punitive? Aren't we trying to get away from a police state? Right? So apparently this dude didn't know it was going to be a feminist event. So like the joke is on him, but really the joke is on the audience, because they all went there in good faith thinking this is a feminist event. And then this dude shows up and says a bunch of stuff that they're, pressuring him to say, and he's horrified, whatever. Now the event had been plugged by, Ford and some of the other people as a free event, free tickets, whatever. And come see us to break down love and stuff and generally have a good time being a smart cookie. So this is disappointing that she was basically kind of threw her fans under the bus to get them to come to this thing where it wasn't what she was selling it at. So again, this dude's attendance had actually been orchestrated as a part of a skit for the second season of this TV show based on a U.S. format, which does not surprise me. Of course, that's where the punishment part comes in, because again, we just love violence and prison. The show revolves around pranks in which the cast members push the limits of embarrassment by placing each other in awkward situations, giving orders to Patsy via ear device, and recording the experience with hidden cameras. The aim is to extract maximum punishment from the subject. Like, oh God. Like, men are just like, this is why, like, I hate that the industry is controlled by men, because only men would think of this, Like, they literally pay $18,000 to go become a man at these boot camps where they just get tortured by, like, military dudes, and that's how they, tap into their divine masculinity. That's the same people who think like this. Oh, I know. Let's put these men in these awkward situations and punish them for everyone's amusement. How is this funny? Like, this whole, like, practical joke funny, like literally, are we bringing back Punk'd? I thought we learned from Punk'd. They almost got Serena Williams killed in Punk'd because they punked her into trying to save somebody from, I think it was sex trafficking or kidnapping, and she actually went to go save them, and like, she could have died trying to save that person. Anyway, I've already did videos on that this summer that, I hate premises like this. Men just hate themselves so much that they think it's hilarious to punish people. So it says, according to one source involved in the event, who was not authorized to speak publicly, Steele had no idea that he was walking into it on Wednesday night, though the 3 other panelists were aware of the prank. Which again, it's like, why did y'all agree to this? Again, I'm going to comment on that at the very end. When he saw the situation, his face just dropped. The idea of being on a panel with 3 strong, smart, opinionated women was his idea of hell. Why? Why is that your idea of hell? Wow. Wow, what a terrible life. What a hard life. Your idea of hell. Think about what hell is being on a stage with 3 really smart women who are feminists. Like, what a hard life. My God! That shows you how intimidated and jealous men are of feminists. But the 3 women who have often been subject to vile abuse from their critics participating in the show made it seem like a lighthearted change of pace and perhaps a way to reach a broader audience. Instead, it provoked an angry reaction from some of their staunch fans. There had been signs in the room indicating that the event would be filmed, but no detail was given beyond that. And as a question came from the floor, one woman said that she felt the audience should have been informed beforehand about the true nature of this event. That's true. I don't want to be on camera on a show being basically made fun of for my honest reaction to be insulted by this man making jokes about consent and things that literally traumatize and destroy women's lives. And this man's making is doing a prank and purposely triggering the whole audience for laughs, for their show, for ratings. I don't want to be a part of that. So this part makes me mad too. It comes down to consent from the audience. They were not told what this is really about. So some of the criticisms they got from audiences just wasted an hour of my time, which I'll never get back. The poor woman behind me was crying. I'll be okay, but this show probably should have come with a trigger warning. Unfortunately, any opportunity for insightful discourse was overshadowed by a painfully unfunny man, shocker, who made a complete mockery of what could have been a really interesting panel. Your voice has been a beacon of inspiration for many, including myself. To witness your participation in a prank show where the very essence of feminism seemed to be twisted and exploited for laughs was disheartening, to say the least. To be witness to your complicity in this is so disheartening. It sends a message that our voices and our experience are not worthy of serious consideration, but merely fodder for entertainment. Woo! That was right on point. Feminists are already considered just angry and not fun. And anybody who knows me, and usually people who follow me and like my stuff, even my anger I turn into humor. But I'm silly, I'm goofy, I play dumb instruments, and I talk about really serious stuff. And for these, now if you criticize this show, now you're feeding into this idea that women just don't have a sense of humor. We just, men love to say, yeah, it's just a joke. I'm just joking and trivializing a grape that literally traumatized. I'm just this stuff that is life-changing, life-threatening, life-ending consequences. And we're just angry because we don't think it's funny that men make crazy, stupid jokes about this. I do believe that women or anybody who has experienced grape should be able to make grape jokes. Some of my best jokes are grape jokes, but they are not trivializing grape. They are using humor to hit you in the stomach with a very serious topic. They're shining a light on it, but men make terrible grape jokes. Unless they have actually been graped themselves, their grape jokes are used to punch down or to just mock it. And so they shouldn't be able to talk about it at all, usually, unless they've experienced it, in my humble opinion. I almost never heard a good one from a man. But I also just don't think usually, especially cishet white men, are the least funny people I've ever met in my life, with the exception of a few. Because comedy is based on truth. And when you live in constant delusion and are not even in touch with your own humanity, much less recognize the humanity of other people, how close to truth do you think you are? They think we're not funny because they don't get our jokes. That's really what it comes down to. But I want to tell a story about how I saw this kind of thing in real time, men taking up all the space in the room, and I'm going to end on something else. So when I went, to a feminist event here in France. What are you doing? Okay, Mo's decided he wanted to go lay in the sun outside. I don't blame you. Good for you. So I went to a feminist event here in France with one of France's most popular French feminists. She's a journalist. She's amazing. So she has a podcast and a book with the same name. This is Victoire Toyon. I said that right. Le cours sur la table. And she actually references my work in her podcast and her book. And her other podcast, Les cuisses sur la table, which is balls on the table, which is another feminist podcast. Anyway, so she had an event for this here in Lyon. And I reached out to her and I was like, hey, thank you for putting my work in your book. And so we exchanged messages. And then when I found out she was coming to Lyon, I was like, hey, I'm going to come to that. So we met up for coffee beforehand. And it was really cool to meet her because, you know, she's at like this level of her career. She just does really great work. And so talking with her, and then she had this event. Now this event was at a small bookstore. It was a feminist bookstore owned by two amazing women. And there was very limited tickets at this event. In fact, it was like sold out. I couldn't go, like I could barely go. The only reason I was able to go is because I reached out to them. I was like, hey, can I come to this? I'm like in the book. And they're like, okay. So when we showed up for this event, there's a line out the door, like around the block. And it was all these women. You could see in their faces, they're like, oh my God, there she is. It was like walking next to like a rock star. And they were just like looking at the look on these women's faces, like, oh my God, they're about to meet this woman who has maybe changed their life or changed their thinking or just helped them process a lot of stuff or inspired them or made them want to be a journalist or whatever, you know, like you never know. I've had so many role models that I'm like, oh, I would love Jane Fonda. Somebody please help me meet that woman before she dies. I hate to frame it that way, but you know, she's an icon, and her and Lily Tomlin, I would do anything to meet them. Anyway, I imagine if Jane Fonda was walking down the street, I'd be like, ah! Right? So we get into this event. It's all women and maybe 3 men. I don't know. Maybe there's like 60 people in this room. She does a live, basically she does a podcast where she's talking about her book, talking about her work. She even gives me a shout out, and I really appreciate it. She's like, oh, you're talking about that. And then she did a Q&A. Now, would you believe, I'm sure you'll find this so hard to believe, that every single man in that room had a question. There was only enough time for a few, like maybe 5 questions, and men could not be in that room without asking a question and making it all about them. And basically, and she handled these questions so well. And one guy literally was just like, he just was like, I do this and la 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 la, and she interrupted him. She says, I'm sorry, do you have a question? And I was like, right? Oh, you're coming back in? Okay. Yeah, okay, there you go. Take your seat at the king baby chair while I sit on the floor. It's the only king baby I let in my life. So this guy, he was like, and he basically thought of a question on the spot because she basically was, and I couldn't understand everything she was saying, but basically she spent all of her time answering like 101 level feminism questions from these men who just couldn't stand being in a room and not being the center, right? This same way, this is like, I imagine this would be if I went to an event that was about racism and anti-blackness in particular. And let's say I was only one of two white people in that room, and all the people around me probably care way more than I do about this topic because they've been on the receiving end of so much violence, right? Like at this point in my deconstruction, there's no way I would stand up and ask a question. But maybe younger, more naive, ignorant Melanie would have been like, well, I have something to say. I have a question, or I want to be a good one, like the pick me. But that's what to make yourself be like, you have to say something. It has to be about you. You know what I mean? Like the same way white people, we always make everything about ourselves when a lot of times it's like not even about us. But we're like, what about us? Right? This is what men do all the time, right? And to see it live happening, like all the women in the room, I was like, because I couldn't necessarily understand everything, right? I was like, this is what, like years ago, so my French was way worse. But when you can't understand, you pay more attention to the things you can't, and the body language, the silence in the room, it was deafening. Just seeing the women just like holding in their frustration, like doing this, being like, all of the women were so frustrated these men wouldn't shut up, right? And then one of the guys' question was like, what about the men? Basically being like, what about the good ones kind of thing. And it was like, oh my God, here we go. But afterwards, I was like, I asked her, I was like, so what do you think about that dude asking? She was like, every time I do this, every time I do a question answer, any event, the men always have to say something and they want a cookie. They want a cookie for being there. They need to be recognized, right? And so at the very least, these men just can't handle something not being about them. But I would even argue some of those men are there to get laid or to be worshiped. Like, oh, look, all these women, I'm the only man brave enough to come to this. Look at me, right? And it was so annoying because like men who come to things that are about feminism should shut up. Don't say anything. Your presence alone makes it a little unsafe. So the very least you can do is say nothing. Shut up, sit there, and be grateful that you are allowed in that space, right? The same way whoever it is with the power goes into an environment where you are historically the scary person, the predator, the person who incites violence. Just be grateful that you are trusted being there and shut up, right? So I learned a lot from watching this. I got so angry and then I was like, oh, okay, this is something you may take note of. It always try to not center myself in discussions about things that I am not on the receiving end of that violence, right? Because I expect that bare minimum of that from men, and yet they have such a hard time with it. And so to think that that these women, promoted this show as this show, back to the original story, that these feminists promoted this show is like, this is a safe space. We're going to talk about love and marriage and stuff with feminist authors. To think that they were in on the prank with these two douchebags. For those douchebags, it wasn't even their show they were doing it for. It was for these dudes' show. It feels like a violation. Like it violated the trust of the audience. And then it comes down to, why would they do that? And I just want to chime in here because I have never taken a brand deal, but I don't even know if I get offered them. Like, people reach out sometimes and I'm like, why would I ever do that? I don't even wear makeup. Why would I promote makeup? I have been like anti-brand deals because A, I just assume that none of them would fit me. And B, as a journalist, it feels like for the most part, it would jeopardize my integrity. I'm not just a journalist. I have done journalism, but I'm a storyteller and I talk about everything. Right? And a lot of my stuff, at least half of my content, has been me talking about my own story and doing comedy and travel and all this stuff, right? And so I'm not like a staff writer at the New York. I'm not a staff writer. So I'm not like known as a journalist, but that's part of the things that I've done. And yet journalism is in such a crisis right now. Writing is that's literally why I moved to videos, because they don't pay anymore. Now that Chat GP whatever, like, forget about it. But then, like, literally, the Clock app, I poured all this 2 years into building my platform, and then they just shadow banned me. I can't get more than 5,000 views per day, which means I make about 50 cents to $1 a day from all this work. And I'm like, cool. So, YouTube is the only income I have now. I can't get paid to write. I can't, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like, I understand a lot of women, I don't ever want to take a brand deal if it's offered to me that goes against my principles, that violates the trust of my audience. I will never do that. And yet at the same time, I could understand how these women thought, oh, maybe being a part of something that's going to, promote my work and open up new doors for me. And then all it did was make all their audience feel violated. And I understand why the audience is violated. But I also understand that, like, if artists have a really hard time making money, female artists have 10 times as much harder time. And then the more marginalized you are, you add 10 times, 10 times, 10 times, right? The more intersections you're at. So it's just, I think a lot of women especially are like, how the hell do I make money without selling my soul? So for me, the most important thing for me is my name. That's always been the most important thing for me. That's why, what articles I've written, I don't ever want to, like, a lot of writers, in the beginning stages of writing would put articles out there that they knew would sell, but it was more just kind of like, woo, like, look at this crazy idea without really thinking of the impact of it. And then they're so embarrassed to have that article out there and they can never take it back. So I've always been trying to always play the long game of being very intentional about what I do and making sure I'm not ever doing anything for the wrong reasons, you know, especially not for something that makes me like famous quick. I don't ever want that, because that's usually like really not good for people in general. I'd rather like the slow, strong, steady build than something overnight, especially something that's like, I don't ever want to go viral for the wrong reasons, you know? That's career-ending stuff. Unless you're a white man, like that's career-ending stuff. And so I've been talking with my mutuals about this. I've been, talking with my coach, Lauren. She's amazing. I hired her to help me figure out some of this stuff. I'm going to tag her because she's so amazing, and she helps me really kind of figure out. She reminds me of what I'm worth, because a lot of times I just really am just like, and I'm trying to figure out like if I was ever to take a brand deal so that I can literally continue to do what I love, since these platforms have us by the balls. What would that look like? Would I take a deal for like a rhyme writer? Because that changed my life. That literally changed my life. That helped me actually heal a lot of trauma, was learning how to please myself. That actually took all the pressure off of like trying to get men to I want to be able to do for myself what these dudes could never do. And it really just like, and so I was like, or what do you call it? Lubricants, as somebody who also really had a hard time with that. Like if I ever did do a brand just so that I could pay my bills and then I could enjoy creating more without this pressure of like, oh my God, can I make rent this month? But I also like, I don't ever want to align with something that I don't believe that they're doing something like bad, or, this is like, I don't know. Anyway, but that's one reason why I'm, doing the Patreon and stuff, just so that I can hopefully find a way where I'm not just dependent on, the TikTok of Oz, because I feel like I'm like working for an abusive man who's like, you know what? All the people who love your stuff, I'm not going to show it to them. You have 176,000 viewers, but I'm not going to show it to any of them. Even though you love them and they love you, they're like cock blocking me from my audience, which then literally my income went from like paid my rent to like $1, $2 a day. I'm like, oh wow, okay. Oops, I'm thank God, like I have one other stream of income. That puts a lot of pressure on that. So the reason why I'm talking about all this is that I think that we assume like if to be an artist or writer or comedian or anything, it's really hard to pay your bills. And a lot of times the only way you're able to do that is if you have a spouse or a partner or a parent who is funding you. And most people don't have that. And so, most creators have to have a day job or whatever. But like people are like, go teach English. And I'm like, teach English for 10 euros an hour? Like I can't work like a 40-hour work week and then also pour into this stuff. Like it's just, it's hard to figure it out. It's hard to figure out how to make an income, because literally capitalism is screwing everything. AI is really, every artist I know is flipping out. We don't know what to do. It's like, I saw this picture the other day and I love it. This is my buddy, David Crabb. He's one of the best storytellers I've ever met and I love him so much. But he posted this. You know what the biggest problem with pushing all things AI is? Wrong direction. I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my dishes and laundry. Exactly, like I thought AI was supposed to make my life easier, and I literally can't think of anything yet that it's making my life easier other than making it harder for me to get paid. And now they're like trying to write scripts. Now they're trying to make movies with AI. It's like, I don't want a robot doing this, especially because it's white men who program the robots or whatever. Like, did no one see Terminator 2? Is no one else afraid of, like, when I see those cop dogs that the New York City Police Department, I'm like, all I think is Terminator 2. I don't want robots. I don't want robot dogs. I don't want AI writing stories. I don't want, white men created all of this. I don't want that. Like, I don't understand. Like, do we need to re-release Terminator 2? Because because that movie gave me nightmares. I was like, robots bad. Robots bad. I'm like, oh wow, we got robot dogs already. Okay. Why would you replace this with a robot? Right? Anyway, the point is, like, I'm disappointed. I understand why that audience is so disappointed in those feminist authors. And I don't know them or their work really, but I think that was a really bad move. I'm also curious what they were told that show was going to be about, or if they understood or they really thought it through, or if they thought like, oh, like, you know, as a writer, like writers do not like, even that woman who wrote, I could do a whole video on this. You know, the woman who wrote that book Made, that got made into a Netflix show, she's struggling. She is struggling to pay her bills. You can have a best-selling New York Times book that's made into a hit Netflix series and still barely be able to pay your bills. Okay, you're going outside again. Make up your mind, Mose. Yeah. Classic. So I hope I never make a mistake like that, like signing up for something, thinking it's an opportunity for my career, only to lose the trust of all my audience. I hope I never do that. I really think things through before I write things, again, I've never had a brand deal. But anyway, I just wanted to help people understand, because, you know, we don't like to pay women. Women don't even like to pay women. The women's magazines that I wrote for, with the exception of one, paid me pennies. They paid me worse than any publication, because they know women will do it for little money. And if I won't do it, someone else will. And whenever I mention my, you know, PayPal and stuff, I get people violently like, why are you putting that in the videos? I'm like, you don't have to do anything. People have asked me for it, because people have said, you literally changed my life. And that sometimes you know, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just providing information. No one's making you do anything. And so anyway, I just, like, women, artists, creators, writers, whatever, women in general, we need to start learning how to get paid, to value other people's work, to value our work, to value the invisible labor and all these things, because we're just so used to not getting paid, and just give in every way possible, through motherhood, at our jobs, in our relationships, and do even more than we should, because the men won't do enough. And then the men are like, have no problem assuming that they should get paid for literally everything they do. Whereas a lot of us, like, don't think that we should be paid, and we also don't think other women should get paid. I'm really trying to deconstruct that myself, in terms of like me really trying to truly value other women and what all they're doing. So all my ideas around all this are like, especially with AI, just like being this slow moving nightmare train, and all of us being at the mercy of the algorithm on these platforms. Anyway, the more that I can just kind of connect with my community, and that's why I'm doing the Patreon and stuff, so that I can just talk to the people who like my stuff, rather than hoping it gets to people through the algorithm. That's kind of the idea behind it, because I really don't like TikTok just deciding, you know, yep, no longer talking to your audience. They're never going to see you again. They're going to forget you exist, because we're just not going to push your videos out. Like, okay, 2 years of work gone, you know? Anyway, it's rough out here in these artist streets, but it's rough out here in all these streets. This is like such a crazy little system. The more we start holding, you know, pushing back against these billionaires in whatever ways we can, and, you know, supporting each other instead of these corporations, the better off we're all going to be, because they ain't going to share. That's for sure. Let's take the Melinda Bezos, or what is that her name? Crap. Is that Melinda Gates? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Bezos' ex-wife, she just like, take my money, take it, I don't want it. Where he's just like, give me more, right? God. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for commenting, sharing, liking, all that stuff. It really helps me build my platform, which is the thing that helps me get paid. Thank you.